Welcome back to Off the Rip episode 2. You are joined by your host, which is me, Dylan Tarmey. Today I'm going to discuss a whole load of shit, so here we go. There is never a right time to do anything, and there is never a right time for me to start this episode. There is never a right time for me to start this podcast, and this is particularly poignant to me at the moment because I've hesitated doing what we're doing right now for so long. I've spent so much time thinking about what the podcast should be and how I should approach the podcast, and in doing so, I've wasted so much time, so many ideas, so much experience in just waiting to do the thing. There's always something. For me, before it was the podcast, it was starting a business. And before that, it was getting fit. There's always something that there will never, ever be a right time to do. Maybe it's asking a girl out. Maybe it's asking a boy out. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's just starting a fitness journey. Whatever it might be, you're probably putting off something that you should be doing. And it's probably causing you quite a lot of anxiety. At least it does for myself. I made a short video recently talking about the idea of stress and how stress isn't always a bad thing. And I think in society, we've been programmed to believe stress is bad. If you've had a tough week at work, you're stressed, you should relax, have a few drinks. It's not completely false, but I think it's generating this fear around stress. But stress is good. Stress is really fucking good. So if I can reframe your perspective on stress for a moment, just hear me out. So when we were hunter-gatherers back in the day, we were getting chased by shit. And being chased by stuff is stressful. But if we didn't run away, we would have been killed and we would no longer exist as a species. But because we had stress, because we were able to avoid the threats and think of other ways not to avoid them, but other ways to get around them, murder them, however we got ahead, those all came from a place of stress. People weren't sitting around by the fire thinking like, God, I feel like killing something today. Or God, I really feel like running away for my life. Again, these things come from a place of stress. Stress is a catalyst for doing, and sometimes specific things will give you a lot of stress. Again, it might be the thought of asking someone out. It might be the thought of going to the gym. It might be the thought of starting a business. Maybe it's doing homework, essays, doing your exams, whatever it is. There's probably a lot of stress being generated by you not doing the thing. And the only way to mitigate that stress and to feel fulfilled is to do the thing. Again, there is never a right time to do something. So my suggestion to you is write it out and do it. Those are the two things you need to do. Write it on a piece of paper somewhere, make it real, set yourself a deadline and do it. The deadline sometimes isn't super important. Like, I personally don't find a huge benefit in deadlines. If it's a big project or I'm liaising with the team, sometimes having a deadline works because, everybody's working towards the same goal and the same output. But if it's a creative venture or if it's something just for yourself, sometimes a deadline isn't a good thing because it causes this restriction around trying to make something that maybe can't actually be made in that time. Again, I'll be the devil's advocate here. Deadlines are also a fantastic way to get your shit done and get it done fast, because I'm guilty of allowing tasks to take much longer than they need to take, and that's Parkinson's law. Work will expand to the time allotted to it. If you allow yourself to say, I'm going to create this video and I'm going to give myself a week, the video will take a week. If you say, I have to create this video for someone or for myself by the end of today, you'll be surprised, but you'll make the video within the day. It mightn't be as good as it could be over the week, but a lot of the times we just procrastinate and we put too much time into doing the thing. And again, just do the thing. Set the deadline short, make it fast, get after it. And if you don't feel like setting a deadline, don't do it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a person to tell you what to do. These are thoughts of my own and things that I will probably take action upon. Another quick way to figure out what the thing is that you need to do is sit in that stress. Close your eyes, think about what's stressing you out. There'll probably be 1,000,001 things that jump to mind, but there'll be a couple of things that consistently come back in, and they'll be louder than the rest. And I say that quite figuratively. If you close your eyes and you actually allow all of your thoughts to bounce around your head, which we don't do enough anymore because we're always on our phone, we're always distracted, and we're always doing something. We're seeking some form of utopia, to use the word, where none of these problems exist, and a lot of them come from phones. A lot of them come from, whatever it might be that you do, which is your way of disconnecting. Again, that's important. a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is subjective, and you have to be the subscriptor, if that's the correct word, or the prescriber is the word I'm looking for. And you have to decide, like, okay, am I going to allow myself to sit on my phone for an hour in the evenings, catch up on social media, message some of my friends, or am I going to be a complete hard ass and turn my phone off? That's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I tend to vary between A and between B. Sometimes I don't look at my phone. Sometimes I can't get off the damn thing. They're great for distractions, but distractions aren't good. So again, close your eyes, listen to all those thoughts bouncing around inside your head. The ones that are the loudest, the ones that consistently come back, those are the ones that you need to tackle. And again, there will never be a right time to do the thing. If you're thinking there will be, you're being naive, and it's never going to happen. So you need to stop lying to yourself, first and foremost, talking to you, and just do the thing. Less is more. Sometimes doing less is actually doing more. And this is a phrase that's been thrown around for years, so I'm definitely not coining this one as my own. But it's, again, it kind of ties into the first concept where there's never a right time to do anything, but sometimes doing the thing is extremely difficult. And again, we'd be naive to think that it will be easy. If you look at what you have to do and you think, how can I quickly and like, maybe not effectively, but how can I quickly make momentum towards this? It's probably doing it in really small parts. It might be as small as putting aside 5 minutes of your day to do that specific thing. If it's a fitness journey, maybe it's 5 minutes you spend into research. You do that 2 times a day. Now you've done 10 minutes. I'm starting super low here. This is not really what I would do. But again, we're looking at going from literally 0 to something here. I would set aside 5 minutes a day. Then you do 10 minutes. You do 2 intervals of 5. Then you do 2 intervals of 10. Now you're at 20 minutes a day. And then you do 2 intervals of 20 or 3 intervals of 20. And now you're at an hour a day. So now you can say, I've put an hour aside towards doing the thing that I know I need to do. And again, if it's something like starting a business, you can't expect this thing to just take off and start overnight. We live in a universe now where, to go back to the phones, we're seeing so many like crazy success stories, like Iman Ghadzi, a person who has been doing this since he was 16, but now he's talking about his success because he's sitting in his success, and he's using that as a vehicle to gain leverage and to gain traction online. And I can't blame him. He's doing the exact right thing. He's put in the work for over 10 years. Maybe not 10 years, I don't know. I think he's 25, I don't know. He's put in the work for nearly 10 years, and he's at a point now where he can brag about it. I don't think bragging's good, but he also doesn't do that. I'm choosing my words poorly here, but again, he started somewhere. There was a point in his life where he probably spent weeks and weeks and months trying to generate 10,000 euro a month, and then he got to the point, and then it all began to snowball, which we'll talk about later. Less is more. Start with something. Something is better than nothing. If there's nothing there, there's nothing to be corrected, and the something will never get better. I read a book recently, reading a book, and they talk about the idea of having some skin in the game. The book is The Diary of a CEO. I'm extremely late to read this book, and I'm a little way through it, and this is one of the first things he talks about, and it's this idea of it's easier to learn and it's faster to learn if you have something that will impact you involved in the task. So if it's starting a business, if you put money on the line and you say, well, I'm going to invest €1,000 or I'm going to invest €100 into my business, I have to see some performance. That was kind of how I got started. I didn't even know I was doing that. But when I bought my first camera, I was shitting myself. I was like, I just spent €500 on a camera and I have no experience and no idea what I'm doing. But having spent that money, it made it feel a lot more real. And it felt like, Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money. I better get my worth's worth. So I better get my worth out of it. Having skin in the game is a great way to do things fast. God, man, I'm getting fired up talking about this stuff. This is, again, why I wanted to do this. I need to calm down a bit, though, because I can feel myself getting too excited. So less is more. Start with something, and over time, you start to compound those small things, and before you know it, you're putting in an hour a day. And then we look at getting some skin in the game. So now, okay, you're learning, you're putting aside that hour a day, you start doing maybe 2 hours a day, you start becoming a little bit more interested because you know more, because you've spent more time knowing and learning, and that it makes sense for you to put money on the line. Then you put a little bit of money on the line, and now all of a sudden your learning is happening faster. You're more willing to put time aside because there's stakes, and stakes are a great way to get shit done. Sometimes you have to pull the trigger on yourself. It's like Russian roulette, you know? You have to have a little bit of fucking pressure and scarcity to actually make a decision. So These small steps are much better than the occasional long jump. So let's say you do 1,000 small steps, it's going to be tenfold more effective than someone who does 100 big leaps. You're going to get there slower. It's like the turtle wins the race or whatever the slow animal was. But it makes sense. Life is a marathon. You don't want to rush this shit. It's all about trying to pace yourself, and don't be naive either. There's going to be cases when you have to sprint. Things are going to come at you, and the only option you're going to have to get ahead of them is to say yes, and to maybe go a little bit faster than you had been planning to do. But that's okay. Due to the fact that you've already put in the time, you've already put in the training, it's just going to be an accelerated period of learning. They're called sprints in a startup scenario, where people will put aside like a month or a couple of weeks and they'll do a sprint. It's literally called that, where they'll work towards getting a task done as quickly as they can, and they'll do intervals of sprints, literally like you're doing running training or like you're training for a football game, whatever it is. It's the same concept. Working and training are very similar. You show up every day, you put in that time, you get better at your craft, and then you have to have a show out every once in a while where you play the other team or you have a big work commitment going on. It's the same thing. On the topic of these sprints that will inevitably come to you if you put yourself in a position by doing the thing, saying yes is the fastest way to learn. Let me explain. When I first picked up my camera and I got offered a job randomly, it was due to the fact that a friend was working with these people, and these people came to me, and Jake Brown hit me up and he said, "Will you video?" And I said yes. And I had no clue what I was doing, zero clue. But I said yes, and yes was the quickest way for me to learn as much shit as fast as possible. Because if I had said no, I would have spent probably years trying to figure out what I figured out in the space of 2 years. Saying yes is a super, super efficient way to learn. If somebody asks you to do an extra task in work and you say yes, now you know how to do that thing. You mightn't have known how to do it when you said yes, but that's fine. The internet exists. You can say yes to shit, go to the bathroom and Google the things that you said yes to, figure it out and do it. YouTube exists. Go onto YouTube and watch a video on how to do the thing. I bet you €100 if you look up a tutorial on YouTube right now, you'll find it. There's tutorials for everything. That's the only way I know how to work, is if I can't figure out a problem, Google it, research it, figure out the problem, because someone else has had to figure out the problem and they've shared it kindly on the internet. Take what they've learned, put it into yourself and fix the problem. Falling over my words and shouting, sorry. If you're listening to this, you're probably upset about your ears, and I am sorry. Say yes more. So if you get any opportunity that you think is some way related to what you want to do, just say yes to it and figure it out after. You mightn't do the best job at it. And again, if you think you're not going to be able to do it, don't say yes. Again, this is not advice for you to take black and white. There's very much a lot of variability to things in here. This is more so thoughts and concepts, Jesus, Dylan, concepts that I've come to terms with, and I'm trying to remind myself of them. So saying yes is great, but how do you get into the conversations to say yes? So for me, the easiest way I see it being done is message as many people as you want. Again, if you're interested in getting into the fitness space, maybe you just DM a bunch of personal coaches. You ask them, how do you do this? How do you do that? And maybe it's in the business sense. You look at your niche and you just message a load of people in that niche and you ask, could I jump on a call with you? And you say yes when they come back and they say, oh, I have time now. You say yes. It's a case of volume. You have to put out as many of these fishing hooks as possible, and one or two of them will bite. Not all of them will bite, but those couple that bite, you say yes to them, you follow through, and before you know it, you'll have learned something. So again, if 100 fishing hooks in the water gets you 2 bites, well then you do 200 hooks, that gets you 4 bites, and so on and so forth. And the more times you get bites, the better you're going to get at fishing. So next time you put out 100 casts, you might get 4 bites back rather than getting 2 per 100, if that makes sense. It's, again, the exponential effect, which we will talk about, but saying yes is the fastest way to learn. There's never a right time to do anything. Less is more, and saying yes is the fastest way to learn. Saying no is the fastest way to work. So this is a complete contrast to the last point. So saying no is the fastest way to get shit done, because saying yes is fantastic to learn, and it's fantastic to get yourself into the conversations where you might generate work or you might generate opportunities, but saying no is the fastest way to get them done. And I don't mean saying no to the task, But when you get these opportunities, it's inevitable because you're going to have a load of fishing hooks in the water that you're going to get additional claims or additional tasks, and things are going to start getting busier, and they're going to get busier quickly. Again, as I just said, if you keep putting out your fishing hooks and you get better at fishing, you're going to be getting more people coming back in the door. So at a point, you're going to have to figure out how to say no. Saying no sucks. I hate saying no. And my entire idea with my business is that I will never say no. I will always say yes, and I will take on as much as I possibly can. And if I can't take it on, then I will hire to take on the workload. That's what we've done to get to where we are right now. But I'm at a position now where there are some things that I have to say no to. There might be the occasional project that I sound and think I'm interested in at the time, but then I let it ruminate and I think about it for a couple of days, and it mightn't be something that works, or it just mightn't be something I have the time for, and I can say no, and that's fine. Again, I have this mentality of scarcity. It's like, take it while it's there, but sometimes you have to realize that if it's there now, it'll probably be there in a little while. Of course, if it's a huge opportunity, don't say no. Don't be a dum-dum. But if it's something that's just going to divert your attention, say no. Dispersion is the enemy of focus. If you have 10 tasks going on at any given time, you can guarantee that all of those 10 tasks are not going to be done to the fullest of your ability, and that is just a fact. If you have 10 tasks and you split them up 2 per day, 5 days a week, well, that's different. But sometimes, in my position at least, I find that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done on a daily basis, whether it's something that breaks and it needs to be fixed, or something new is happening, you need to jump on it, or maybe there's just something existing that you need to deal with still. Saying no is the quickest way to get any one of those things done. We live in a day and age, to use that phrase again, where focus is extremely difficult. To sit down and focus on a task is hard. We have so many distractions, and that's because all of these huge companies like social media is not a company, that's embarrassing. Like Meta, like TikTok, like YouTube, Google. These people are literally building their business models on taking your attention and putting it onto their platform. They get paid based on how much time you spend on the platform. That's why the algorithms are so good. It's not to help you find new people. It's because they don't want you to leave their app. If everyone went onto TikTok for a minute or 2 minutes a day, it would not be a successful app. Because people can't put the damn thing down, that's why it's so successful. That's why it's so talked about. So again, we're in like a war on attention. I've also made short form videos on this, but it's not scary because it's very easy to identify once you can see what's happening, but it is hard to get out of. We're literally, like, everybody is addicted to their phone. If you knew every one of your friends was addicted to cocaine, you'd be like, Jesus, you need to, calm down, sort shit out. But everyone's addicted to their phone now. Oh, God damn, man, I'm falling over my words. Everybody's addicted to their phones now, and it's, it takes up more time than most people probably spend doing cocaine. So, well, again, I'm not speaking from experience here, and I also don't know anyone who spends 6 hours on average of their day on cocaine, but there probably are people. I'm getting down a touchy subject here, so I will move on. Again, saying no is the fastest way to get work done. Saying yes is the fastest way to learn. Take that in the right hand, take that in the left hand, and find a nice little balance of both of those things, but if you combine them together, you'll become a workhorse. We have an inability to understand the exponential function. As human beings, we cannot conceptualize the fact that 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. Kind of confusing myself, but I don't think humans think in the logic of exponential functions or the exponential sequence. So sometimes when you put a lot of work in, again, to talk about the fishing analogy, if you throw out 100 hooks and you throw out 100 hooks 5 days a week, you keep doing that and you're going to get a lot better at taking fish in or taking opportunities in, to speak back to the analogy. You multiply that over time. Time is the exponential factor, by the way. Time is what changes things from 1 + 1 = 2 to 1 + 1 = 10. It's time. It's time and experience. You take an idea and you multiply it by time and experience, it's going to equate the equivalent of the time and experience you have collected. That sounded cool, and I'm going to be happy with that when I listen to the podcast back. But that's exactly how it works. And it's very hard to understand that and conceptualize that in the moment. It's very fucking difficult because we're humans and we don't operate in an exponential manner. We don't reproduce in an exponential manner. So it's like it's not in our DNA to think about it. But it's so important to remind yourself of this, especially if you're in a business scenario. I'm guilty of looking at it from a day-to-day perspective and I'm like, God damn, like not a lot is changing here. But then when I zoom out and I think, God, when I used to send this many emails, I got this many responses versus now I get this many or this many work, this much. God, I'm getting so excited, man. I'm actually finding it hard to keep my composure here. Things get bigger over time. And again, the common denominator is time and experience. So put a lot of time in, get a lot of rewards out, and you become more efficient. The more time and the more experience you have in a specific niche or a specific field, it takes a lot less work to do the thing. So then we come back to less is more. Your less is going to be a lot more than someone else's less. So if you've been editing videos for, 4 years versus someone who's been editing videos for a year, your perception of what's a minimum standard edit is going to be way better than someone who's just in the door for a year. Their minimum standard of an edit is going to be horrific. So again, in the terms of the exponential function, that means that over time, that's just going to continue to get greater. And again, all of these points are only applicable if you can have some form of self-discipline and a relatively good work ethic. You don't have to be Superman. You don't have to be frickin' Mr. Limitless, but you do have to have a good baseline of discipline, and you have to understand when enough is enough and when enough isn't enough. That's really it. Never a right time to do anything. Less is more. Saying yes is the fastest way to learn. Saying no is the fastest way to work. And we have an inability to understand the exponential function. A nice combination of all of these things, and I think things will work out pretty well for you. It's just hard to constantly remember all of them. So again, like we said, with the never a right time to do anything, if you write it out, stick it on a wall somewhere and make that thing real, it's going to become easier to do. It's going to become more likely that you do it. And then you multiply that by less is more, and you just do small bits every day. Your small bits are going to get bigger as the time goes. And then you start saying yes to things that are inevitably going to come in by you doing the thing. You say yes to any opportunities. You say yes to talk to people. You say yes to work coming in. And then you'll get to a point where you have to say no to stuff. You have to prioritize the work that you've already cultivated. You've already created these opportunities. So now you say no to some of the additional ones that are just going to be a distraction. And then you have to remember there is an inability in your brain to understand the exponential function. If you keep doing the work and you keep getting better, over time, the results are going to compound. Where it first took like 3 months to go from $0 to $100 or to $1,000, if you multiply that by time and experience, it might take you 3 months to go from 10,000 to 100,000. It's all relative, and it's all down to the fact that you have to do the thing. If you don't start by doing the thing, none of this stuff is worth anything to you. And that's all I have. I was going to plug a little sponsor in the video, but I decided not to. But I might. Shout out to the sponsor. This video is sponsored by Fractured Vibe Visuals. Fractured Vibe Visuals is a creative content production company based in Ireland. We work with multiple companies on a month-to-month basis, creating social media style content, posting said content. We come to your venue, we shoot the content, we edit the content, and we do a pretty damn good job of it. If you've any queries, message the email in the description below and we'll hook you up. Okay, this was super fun. On the last episode I said I would never come back to a podcast episode without having some show notes in mind and having a basic thought of where I would go, and I achieved both of those goals. That is all for this week. If you have any questions or any ideas or thoughts you have, throw them into the comment section because I'd love to talk about them or even consider them for the next episode that I do, which will be coming out every week. And yeah, things are changing. Things are getting a little bit bigger. And thank you for tuning in. This has been Off the Rip with Dylan Tarmey, episode number 2. Bye.